What is that?" The words barely escaped Tyler's throat. He stood frozen in the doorway of the bridal suite, still wearing his tuxedo jacket, boutonniere slightly wilted from hours of celebration. His new wife, Natalie, stood by the vanity in her silk robe, backlit by the soft glow of the bathroom light. In her hand, she held 3 plastic sticks, 3 pregnancy tests, all positive. "Congratulations, Tyler," Natalie said, her voice carrying none of the warmth it had held just hours ago when she'd said her vows. "You're going to be a brother." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was suffocating, thick with the weight of words that couldn't possibly mean what they seemed to mean. Tyler's mind scrambled, trying to rearrange her sentence into something that made sense. What are you?" "Your father," Natalie interrupted, stepping toward him with measured steps, each one deliberate. "The baby is your father's." Tyler's knees buckled slightly. He grabbed the doorframe to steady himself, his face draining of color. That's not funny, Nat. That's sick. Why would you? Does this look like a joke to you?" She held up the tests again, letting them catch the light. 3 tests, taken over the last week. All positive. All while you were busy planning our perfect honeymoon. Before we dive deeper into this nightmare, welcome to True Crime Chronicles, where perfect relationships hide the darkest secrets. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the stories we cover will change how you see the people closest to you. And to my loyal subscribers watching right now, thank you. Your support means everything. And trust me, today's story is one you'll be thinking about long after this video ends. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you missed every single warning sign? Have you ever been so sure about someone's loyalty that you bet your life on it? Drop a comment right now and tell me, where are you watching from? And have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? Because what you're about to hear is a masterclass in revenge, manipulation, and the destruction of a man who thought he was untouchable. This is the story of Natalie Brooks, a woman scorned who didn't just get even. She got everything. 6 months before that wedding night confrontation, Natalie Brooks believed she was living a dream. She was 27, working as a marketing director for a boutique firm in downtown Seattle, and engaged to Tyler Morrison, the golden boy of Morrison and Associates, one of the Pacific Northwest's most prestigious architectural firms. Tyler was 31, charming in that effortless way that came from being raised with money and privilege. He had his father's sharp jawline and his late mother's warm brown eyes. They'd met at a gallery opening 2 years prior. Tyler had approached her while she studied an abstract piece, made a clever joke about modern art being expensive chaos, and by the end of the night, he'd asked for her number. 6 months of dating led to moving in together. Another year, and he proposed at a vineyard in Napa Valley, hiring a photographer to capture her tearful yes against a backdrop of endless grapevines. From the outside, they were perfect. From the inside, cracks had been forming for months. Natalie first noticed the changes last spring. Tyler started working late more frequently. His phone, which used to sit casually on the kitchen counter, now accompanied him everywhere, even to the bathroom. He developed a habit of tilting the screen away from her when notifications appeared. Small things, easy to explain away. Big project, he'd say, kissing her forehead. "Richard's riding me hard about the Bellingham development. You know how he gets." Richard Morrison, Tyler's father, the titan who'd built Morrison and Associates from nothing into a multi-million-dollar empire. At 62, Richard was everything Tyler aspired to be. Commanding, wealthy, respected. He was also cold, emotionally distant, and had a relationship with his son that could generously be described as complicated. Tyler both worshipped and resented his father in equal measure. Natalie had observed this dynamic at countless family dinners. The way Tyler would straighten his spine when Richard entered a room, the slight edge in his voice when discussing firm politics, the need to prove himself constantly. But that spring, Natalie wasn't thinking about Richard or Tyler's daddy issues. She was thinking about the unfamiliar perfume she'd smelled on Tyler's collar. The lipstick shade, not hers, she'd found on a shirt cuff. The way he'd flinched when she'd reached for his phone to check the time. The truth came on a Tuesday in late April. Tyler had left his laptop open on the kitchen table, unusual for someone who'd become increasingly protective of his devices. Natalie hadn't intended to snoop. She'd walked past it, glanced down at the screen, and her entire world had tilted on its axis. The Messages app was open, not to a conversation with a client or colleague, but to a thread with someone named. The preview of the last message was visible. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again? Natalie's hands had trembled as she'd clicked into the conversation. What she'd found wasn't a single mistake or a moment of weakness. It was months of evidence, detailed plans, hotel reservations, photos that made her stomach turn, declarations of feelings, promises about a future that apparently didn't include the fiancé he shared a bed with every night. There were multiple women. 3, for what she could piece together from overlapping conversations. A was the primary one. The messages went back 7 months. But there was also K, and someone he simply called Seattle Girl. Natalie had stood in their kitchen, staring at the screen, feeling something inside her chest crack and then go cold. She didn't cry. Not then. She'd carefully closed the laptop, positioned it exactly as Tyler had left it, and walked to the bedroom. She'd sat on the edge of their bed, the bed they'd picked out together at that Scandinavian furniture store, laughing about how many pillows were too many pillows, and felt the foundation of her life crumble beneath her. But alongside the pain, something else had emerged, something sharp and calculating. If Tyler could betray her while planning a wedding, while promising her forever in front of family and friends, while lying to her face every single day, then why should she play fair? 2 hours later, when Tyler came home with Thai takeout and an easy smile, Natalie had greeted him with a kiss. She'd asked about his day. She'd laughed at his stories about the firm's new intern who couldn't operate the coffee machine. She'd been perfect, and she'd started planning. Natalie had met Richard Morrison several times before that April evening, but she'd never really studied him. He was a widower. Tyler's mother had died of cancer when Tyler was 19. Richard had never remarried, dedicating himself instead to building his architectural empire and maintaining emotional distance from his only child. He lived in a stunning modern home overlooking Puget Sound, all glass and steel and carefully curated art. The first family dinner after Natalie's discovery fell on a Saturday in early May. Tyler had been reluctant to go. He just wants to interrogate me about the Bellingham project, Tyler had complained while getting dressed. 31 years old, and he still treats me like I'm an intern. Natalie had watched him in the mirror as she'd applied her lipstick, a deep red she knew looked striking against her dark skin. Maybe he just wants to see his son. Richard doesn't do anything without a strategic purpose. Interesting choice of words, Natalie had thought. The dinner was held on Richard's terrace, with a view of the Sound glittering in the late afternoon sun. Richard had answered the door himself. No staff, which surprised Natalie, dressed in casual slacks and a black button-down that probably cost more than her car payment. Natalie, he'd said, his voice a deeper version of Tyler's. You look lovely. Thank you, Richard. He'd held her gaze a moment longer than necessary before turning to Tyler. Son, good to see you. The dinner had started predictably enough. Discussion of the firm's current projects, questions about the wedding planning, polite inquiries about Natalie's work. But as the wine flowed and the sun set over the water, Natalie had noticed something. Richard was lonely. It was in the way he'd lingered over pouring her wine, ensuring her glass was never empty. The way his questions about her work became genuinely curious rather than politely perfunctory. The way he'd laughed, actually laughed, when she'd made a dry observation about Seattle's obsession with artisanal coffee. Tyler, absorbed in his phone and his resentment, had barely noticed. But Natalie had. As Tyler had excused himself to take a call, probably from, Natalie had thought with bitter amusement, Richard had turned to her. "He doesn't deserve you," Richard had said quietly. Natalie had looked up, surprised. "Excuse me." "Tyler. My son." Richard's gray eyes had been steady, unflinching. "He's brilliant with buildings. With people." He'd trailed off, taking a sip of his wine. "He has a lot to learn. He's under a lot of pressure," Natalie had offered, testing the waters. "He creates his own pressure. Always has. Always trying to prove something that doesn't need proving." Richard had leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You, on the other hand, strike me as someone who knows exactly what they want and how to get it." The moment had stretched between them, charged with something Natalie couldn't quite name. When Tyler had returned, complaining about a client's unreasonable demands, Richard had shifted back to polite distance. But as they'd said their goodbyes, as Richard had walked them to the door, his hand had briefly touched the small of Natalie's back. Just for a second. Just long enough for her to understand that he'd felt it too. That night, lying next to Tyler as he slept, probably dreaming of it or Kay, or a Seattle girl, Natalie had stared at the ceiling and made her decision. Tyler had broken her heart. He'd shattered her trust, made a mockery of their relationship, and planned to walk her down an aisle while maintaining his secret life. He'd stolen months of her life that she could never get back. So she would take everything. Not just her dignity, not just a clean break. Everything. His pride, his inheritance, his relationship with his father, his perfect future, everything. And she would do it with the same smile she'd worn when he'd proposed. The same grace she'd shown while planning a wedding to a man who was cheating on her. The same calculated precision he'd used to deceive her. The plan had formed in her mind like a blueprint, appropriate, given the family business. She would marry Tyler. But first, she would seduce Richard. 3 days after that dinner, Natalie had called Richard's office under the pretense of wanting to discuss a surprise gift for Tyler. Something work-related that would impress him. Richard's assistant had patched her through immediately. "Natalie," Richard had answered, surprise evident in his voice. "This is unexpected. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Never. What can I do for you?" She'd heard the slight warmth in his tone, the way his professional demeanor had softened just a fraction. "I was hoping I could buy you lunch," she'd said, keeping her voice light. "Pick your brain about Tyler's career. The wedding planning has me thinking about our future, and I want to understand the firm better. Be a better partner to him." There had been a pause. In that pause, Natalie knew Richard was making a calculation of his own. "Lunch would be fine," he'd finally said. "Thursday. There's a place downtown. Quiet. Good for conversation." "Perfect, Natalie." Richard's voice had dropped slightly. "Does Tyler know about this?" She'd smiled to herself, alone in her office, looking out at the Seattle skyline. "I thought it would be a nice surprise. You know how he gets about accepting help." Another pause. Then, "I'll see you Thursday." As Natalie had ended the call, she'd felt no guilt, no hesitation, only the cold satisfaction of a chess player who'd just positioned their queen for attack. Tyler wanted to destroy her heart while wearing a smile. She would destroy his entire world while wearing a wedding dress. And Richard Morrison, powerful, lonely, longing for connection, would be the weapon she'd use to do it. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Lunch with Richard Morrison was scheduled for Thursday at 1 p.m. Natalie had 3 days to prepare for what would either be the beginning of the most audacious revenge plot she'd ever conceived, or a spectacular failure that would leave her looking desperate and foolish. She chose to believe in the former. Because if there was one thing Natalie had learned in her 7 years of marketing high-end brands to wealthy clients, it was this: people reveal everything in what they desire and what they fear. Find those 2 pressure points, and you could move mountains. Or in this case, move a billionaire architect into betraying his own son. The Seattle Public Library became Natalie's research headquarters. Over the next 3 days, between conference calls and client meetings, she disappeared into archives and databases, constructing a psychological profile of Richard Morrison that would have impressed a FBI profiler. Seattle Business Journal articles revealed his professional trajectory. The hungry kid from a working-class family in Tacoma who'd put himself through architecture school, who'd won his first major commission at 29, who'd built Morrison and Associates into a powerhouse through sheer determination and brilliant design. Society page photographs showed his social evolution. The early years with his wife Catherine, looking slightly uncomfortable at charity galas, her hand always on his arm as if grounding him. Then the middle years, both of them more confident, wealth settling around them like a well-tailored suit. And finally, the later photos after Catherine's death, Richard standing alone at events, impeccably dressed, but radiating isolation despite being surrounded by Seattle's elite. But the most revealing information came from an interview Richard had given to Architectural Digest 3 years ago. In it, he discussed his design philosophy, how buildings should create connection, foster intimacy, bring people together in shared spaces. Architecture is about relationships, he'd said. Every structure I design is meant to facilitate human connection. Ironic, isn't it? I spend my days creating spaces for families, for communities, for love, and I go home to an empty house. The interviewer had asked if he'd considered remarrying. I've dated, Richard had admitted, but I find that women either want the wealth or the status. They see Richard Morrison, CEO, before they see Richard, the man who still can't cook pasta without burning it, who reads poetry before bed, who misses having someone to share silence with. Natalie had read that passage 3 times, memorizing every word. There was her entry point. Richard didn't want to be seduced by obvious beauty or overt sexuality. He'd probably had countless women throw themselves at him over the years. What he wanted, what he'd been denied since Catherine's death, was genuine connection. Intelligence. Someone who saw past the empire to the human underneath. She could give him that. Well, she could perform giving him that. The line between genuine and performed would blur eventually. She'd make sure of it. Thursday arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the kind of spring day that made Seattle feel like a city of possibility. Natalie dressed carefully, a navy sheath dress that was professional but showed her figure, understated jewelry, minimal makeup. She wanted to look like she'd made an effort without looking like she'd tried. The restaurant Richard had chosen was indeed quiet, a French bistro tucked into a corner of First Avenue, the kind of place where deals were made and secrets were kept. Natalie arrived exactly 3 minutes late. Another calculation, punctual enough to show respect, late enough to suggest her own life held importance. Richard was already seated at a corner booth, reading something on his phone. He looked up as she approached, and Natalie caught the brief moment of appreciation in his eyes before his professional mask settled into place. Natalie. He stood, gestured to the seat across from him. Thank you for suggesting this. Thank you for making time. I know you're busy. Never too busy for family. He said it smoothly, but Natalie detected the slight hesitation before family, as if he was testing out where she fit in his taxonomy of relationships. They ordered. Richard recommended the salmon, revealed it was what he always got, and settled into conversation that started professionally but felt like it was straining toward something else. So, Richard said, setting down his water glass, you wanted to discuss Tyler's career. Actually, Natalie said, making a decision in real time, I wanted to discuss you. Richard's eyebrows raised slightly. Me? I'm about to marry into your family, Richard. And I realized I know the business. Tyler talks about projects endlessly, but I don't know the person who built it. The man behind Morrison and Associates. That seems like a significant gap. She watched his face carefully. The surprise. The pleasure of being seen as separate from his empire. The slight vulnerability. That's refreshingly honest, Richard said slowly. Most people only care about the business. I'm not most people. No, Richard agreed, his gray eyes studying her with new intensity. "You're not." The lunch stretched from 1 hour to 2. They talked about architecture and art, about Seattle's evolution, about Catherine. Natalie had asked about her directly, refusing to treat Richard's grief like something shameful that should be hidden. "She sounds remarkable," Natalie had said after Richard shared a story about Catherine forcing him to take dance lessons early in their marriage. She kept me human when success threatened to turn me into nothing but ambition." Richard's voice held genuine affection, genuine loss. Tyler was 19 when she died. Still a kid, really. I should have been there for him more. Instead, I buried myself in work. Grief makes us do strange things. Is that a polite way of saying I was a terrible father? "I think," Natalie said carefully, "you were a man who lost his compass and did the best he could." Richard had gone quiet then, something shifting in his expression. When he spoke again, his voice was rougher. "Tyler really doesn't deserve you. You said that before. It's more true than you know." Natalie had let the moment breathe, watching Richard war with himself about whether to say more. Finally, he'd shaken his head. "I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. You're engaged to my son. You're allowed to have opinions about your son's relationships, even when those opinions might be complicated." The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Natalie had smiled, small, enigmatic, and changed the subject. But the seed was planted. As they left the restaurant, Richard had placed his hand on her shoulder. "This was nice. More than nice. Would you like to do it again? Another lunch?" "I'd like that." Without telling Tyler, Richard had asked, his eyes searching hers. "I don't want him to think I'm going behind his back to bond with his father," Natalie had said smoothly. "He's sensitive about your relationship. Maybe once we've established our own connection, we can include him." Richard had nodded, accepting the logic that was really just an excuse for secrecy. "Next week then," he'd said. Natalie had walked back to her office feeling like a conductor who'd just successfully completed the first movement of a complex symphony. That evening, she'd come home to find Tyler cooking dinner, or more accurately, standing in the kitchen while takeout containers from their favorite Thai place sat on the counter. "Hey babe," he called out, his phone in one hand. "Rough day. Thought we could use some comfort food." Natalie had walked up behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, pressed her face against his back. "You're sweet." She'd felt him tense slightly, guilt, probably, before relaxing into her embrace. "How was your day?" he'd asked. "Productive. Closed the Anderson account." "You?" "Richard's been on my ass about the Bellingham renderings. Nothing's good enough for him." "Perfect opening." "Have you considered," Natalie had said carefully, turning Tyler around to face her, "that maybe he pushes you because he sees your potential? Because he wants you to be great?" Tyler had scoffed. "Richard pushes me because he can't accept that I might do things differently than he did. Everything's a test, I'm failing. Or everything's a test he wants you to pass because he loves you." Tyler had looked at her like she'd suggested the sky was green. "You don't know him like I do." "Maybe I don't," Natalie had agreed, kissing his cheek. "But I know you, and I know you're brilliant. Whatever Richard sees, or doesn't see, doesn't change that." She'd watched Tyler's face soften, watched him pull her closer. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Cheated on me with at least 3 women, Natalie had thought while smiling up at him. "Just lucky, I guess." They'd eaten dinner. Tyler had complained more about Richard, about work stress, about a client who kept changing requirements. Natalie had listened, offered sympathy, played the perfect partner. And when Tyler's phone had buzzed with a text, he glanced at it, smiled slightly, then put it face down. Natalie had said nothing. Later, after Tyler had fallen asleep, she'd carefully taken his phone from the nightstand. His passcode hadn't changed. Her birthday, ironically. The messages were still there, still ongoing. "Hey," had sent a photo. Tyler had responded with heart emojis and promises about this weekend. This weekend, 2 days away. Natalie had taken screenshots, backed them up to a cloud account Tyler didn't know existed and returned the phone to the nightstand. Phase 1 of her plan: document everything. Every betrayal, every lie, every piece of evidence she'd need when the time came. Phase 2: make Richard fall for her. Phase 3 would be the wedding itself, but that was months away still. She had time, and she intended to use every second of it. The lunches with Richard became weekly events. They'd settled into Thursdays, always at different restaurants, always justified by Natalie asking about firm business, about how to support Tyler's career, about architecture and design. But the conversations had long since stopped being about Tyler. By the third lunch, they were discussing books. Richard was reading Neruda's poetry. Natalie admitted she'd always found poetry intimidating. That's because most people approach it like a puzzle to solve, Richard had said. Poetry isn't about understanding every symbol. It's about feeling. Show me, Natalie had challenged. The next week, Richard had brought her a slim volume of Pablo Neruda's love sonnets. Inside the cover, he'd written, "For Natalie, may you feel everything." The handwriting was elegant, careful. The inscription was intimate without being inappropriate. But the gesture itself spoke volumes. By the fifth lunch, Richard had started sharing details about his loneliness, about going to bed in a house designed for a family, now occupied by just him, about missing the small things, someone to share morning coffee with, someone to debate the news with, someone to simply exist beside. "I sound pathetic," he'd said, embarrassed. "You sound human," Natalie had countered, reaching across the table to briefly touch his hand. The touch had lasted perhaps 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, she'd felt Richard's entire body respond. A sharp intake of breath, his hand turning to almost catch hers before she pulled away. "Natalie, tell me about the Bellingham project," she'd said, smoothly redirecting. "Tyler showed me some renderings. Your vision is stunning." It was a dance. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Build intimacy, then retreat. Make him want more without giving him permission to act on it. Yet, the shift came in late June, 3 months into their Thursday lunches. Richard had called her on a Tuesday evening while Tyler was traveling for work, Chicago, meeting with a potential client. Or meeting with a. Natalie neither knew nor cared which at this point. "I know this is unorthodox," Richard had said, "but I'm having a piece delivered tomorrow. A sculpture for the foyer. I'd love a second opinion. And, well, you have excellent taste." It wasn't about the sculpture. They both knew it. "What time?" Natalie had asked. 7. "I'll provide dinner. I'll be there." She dressed carefully. Jeans and a silk blouse. Casual elegance. When Richard answered the door, he was in slacks and a gray sweater that made his eyes look like storm clouds. "Come in," he'd said, and his voice held something it hadn't held before. Hunger. The sculpture was beautiful, an abstract bronze piece that Richard had positioned in the foyer where light from the windows would play across its curves. They discussed it, standing close together, Natalie aware of Richard's warmth beside her. "It's about connection," Richard had explained, his hand hovering near the sculpture's intertwining forms. Two separate elements that become something new when they come together. "Are we still talking about art?" Natalie had asked quietly. Richard had turned to face her fully. They were standing in his foyer, the sound visible through floor-to-ceiling windows behind them, the sun setting in golden rows. "No," Richard had admitted. "We're not." "Richard, I know this is inappropriate. I know you're engaged to my son. I know 1,000 reasons why I should keep my distance." His jaw had tightened. "But these last 3 months, Natalie, you've reminded me what it feels like to be seen. Not as a wealthy man or a business titan, just seen. As myself." Natalie had let silence fill the space between them. Let him feel the weight of what he just confessed. "I feel seen too," she finally said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Richard did see her, or at least he saw the version of herself she'd carefully constructed for him. "But what you're suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I just needed you to know." that these Thursdays have become. He'd trailed off, then tried again. When Catherine died, I thought that part of my life was over. Connection, intimacy, real conversation with someone who challenges me. And then you came into my life, and Natalie had closed the distance between them, placing her hand on his chest. She felt his heart hammering beneath her palm. I'm engaged to Tyler, she'd said softly. I know. He's your son. I know. And this is complicated in ways that could destroy everything. I know. They'd stood like that, her hand on his chest, his gray eyes searching hers, the sunset painting the room in shades of amber. So what do we do? Richard had whispered. Natalie had let the moment stretch until it was almost unbearable. Then she'd stepped back, breaking contact. We have dinner, she'd said, as friends, because that's all this can be. The disappointment in Richard's eyes was gratifying and useful. She'd stayed for dinner, a simple pasta dish that Richard admitted was one of 3 things he could cook without setting off smoke alarms. They'd talked and laughed, and Natalie had been warm but careful, close but not too close. As she'd left that night, Richard had walked her to the door. Thank you, he'd said, for being honest, for not leading me on when you knew how I felt. You're important to me, Natalie had said. I don't want to lose our friendship. Neither do I. She'd kissed his cheek, chaste, appropriate, and left. On the drive home, Natalie had allowed herself a small smile. Phase 2 was complete. Richard was emotionally invested, vulnerable, wanting something he believed he couldn't have. Now she just had to give it to him, but only once she'd ensured the timing would cause maximum damage. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. Tyler had another business trip, Portland this time. He'd left on a Thursday morning, which meant Natalie had the evening free. Her Thursday lunch with Richard had been canceled because he had an emergency board meeting, but he'd texted her around 6 p.m. Meeting was brutal. I could use friendly conversation. Any chance you're free? Natalie had waited 15 minutes before responding. Tyler's traveling. I'm home alone with a bottle of wine and Netflix. You're welcome to join, as long as you promise to trash talk whatever terrible show I pick. Another risk. Inviting him to the home she shared with Tyler. But risk was calculated, and this one would pay off. Richard had arrived an hour later with a second bottle of wine and Chinese takeout. I figured you hadn't eaten, he'd said, looking almost boyish in jeans and a black t-shirt. Natalie had never seen him so casually dressed. They'd eaten on the couch, started a movie neither of them really watched, and talked. The wine flowed. The conversation deepened. And somewhere around 10 p.m., as they sat together in the dim light of the living room, Richard had said, I can't stop thinking about you. Natalie had turned to look at him. Richard, I know all the reasons this is impossible, but sitting here with you, in this moment, I feel more alive than I have in years. You're lonely, Natalie had said gently, and I'm convenient. No, Richard had shaken his head firmly. You're extraordinary. And if circumstances were different, if you weren't engaged to Tyler, I would have asked you out the moment we had lunch that first time. Natalie had set down her wine glass. This was the moment, the fulcrum on which everything would pivot. What are you saying? She'd asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm saying. Richard had reached out, his hand cupping her face with heartbreaking tenderness. I'm saying I'm falling for you. And I know that makes me a terrible father and a selfish man. But it's the truth. Natalie had let her eyes flutter closed at his touch. When she opened them, she'd made sure they were slightly glassy, vulnerability and wine and desire all mixed together. If things were different, she'd whispered, I would have said yes when you asked me out. Natalie. She'd kissed him, softly at first, a question. Richard had answered by pulling her closer, kissing her with the desperate intensity of a man who'd been starving and had suddenly been offered sustenance. They'd ended up in the guest room. Natalie had insisted, couldn't do this in the bed she shared with Tyler, and Richard had understood. Appreciated it even, saw it as proof that she still had boundaries, still cared about something beyond the moment. What he didn't see was the calculation, the precision, the cold certainty that she was doing this not out of passion or revenge or even hurt, but as a chess move in a game Richard didn't even know he was playing. Afterward, lying together in the darkness, Richard had held her like she was precious, like she was the answer to questions he'd been asking for years. "What have we done?" he'd whispered. "Something that can't be undone," Natalie had replied. "Tyler can never know. This was a mistake born from loneliness and wine, and—" "No." Richard had turned her to face him. "Don't call this a mistake. This was the first real thing I've felt in 5 years. It might be complicated and morally questionable and potentially destructive, but it wasn't a mistake." Natalie had kissed him again, softer this time. "Then what was it?" "The beginning," Richard had said, "of something I don't fully understand yet, but something I don't want to give up." Over the next 3 months, they continued. Careful meetings at Richard's house when Tyler was traveling. Hotel rooms when the risk of using either of their homes felt too great. Stolen afternoons and late evenings. Richard had fallen completely, irreversibly in love, and Natalie had documented everything. Photos, videos, recordings. Every piece of evidence she would need. In September, 5 months after their affair began, Tyler proposed moving up the wedding date. "Why wait until next summer?" he'd said over breakfast one Saturday. "Let's do it this December, before the holidays. Small and intimate, just family and close friends." Natalie had pretended to be surprised and delighted. In reality, it was perfect timing. She was already pregnant, had confirmed it 2 weeks earlier. The timing was precise enough that she could plausibly claim it was Tyler's, conceive around their engagement party in August. But she knew. Every night with Tyler had been accompanied by careful birth control. Every encounter with Richard had been deliberately unprotected. The baby was Richard's, and soon, everyone would know it. When Natalie told Tyler about the pregnancy, he'd been ecstatic. Talked about their future, about being a family, about finally having something Richard couldn't criticize him for. He'd given his father a grandchild. When Natalie told Richard, he'd wept, had held her, and talked about second chances and how fate worked in mysterious ways. Neither man knew the truth. Neither man suspected. And as December approached, as wedding invitations went out and plans solidified, Natalie kept one final secret. She had no intention of actually marrying Tyler. The ceremony would happen. The vows would be said, but there would be no happily ever after. Because on their wedding night, she would detonate the bomb she'd been building for 8 months. She would show Tyler the pregnancy tests. She would tell him about Richard. She would reveal everything. The affair, the child, the careful manipulation. And then she would file for divorce, taking half of Tyler's assets with her as the legally wrong party. The morning of the wedding arrived with unexpected snow, rare for Seattle in December. Natalie stood in her apartment, looking at her wedding dress hanging on the closet door. White silk, elegant simplicity, a costume for the final act of her play. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "I know today is complicated, but I need you to know I love you. After today, we'll figure out how to make this work. I can't lose you." Another text from Tyler. "Can't wait to marry you today, babe. You're my whole world." Natalie had set the phone down and looked at herself in the mirror. 9 months ago, she'd been a woman preparing to marry a man she loved, unaware that he was systematically betraying her. Now she was a woman preparing to destroy 2 men who both believed she loved them. The question was, had she destroyed herself in the process? She'd pushed the thought away. There would be time for introspection after the war was won. Today was about execution, about seeing her plan through to its shocking conclusion. She had one more surprise left, something neither Tyler nor Richard expected, something that would ensure her victory was total. The wedding was scheduled for 4 p.m. By midnight, nothing would ever be the same. Natalie picked up her phone and sent 2 identical texts, one to Tyler, one to Richard. "I can't wait to see you at the altar." Both men responded with love and promises. Neither knew that by the end of the night, those promises would be ashes, and Natalie would be standing in the ruins of their lives, having sacrificed everything, including perhaps her own soul, for revenge. The wedding dress hung there, white and innocent, hiding the blood-red truth beneath. The bride checked her reflection one final time. Natalie Brooks stood in the bridal suite of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, surrounded by the trappings of a perfect wedding. Flowers in shades of cream and blush, champagne chilling in silver buckets, bridesmaids laughing in the next room. Outside, guests were already arriving, their cars pulling up to the historic hotel's entrance through the gentle snowfall that had transformed downtown Seattle into something from a fairy tale. Everything was perfect. Everything was a lie. In 6 hours, she would stand before family and friends and promise to love Tyler Morrison forever. In 8 hours, she would destroy him. Her phone sat on the vanity, the screen dark but heavy with weight. 2 men had texted her this morning, both declaring love, both believing they had a future with her, both completely unaware that they were pieces on a chessboard she'd been manipulating for 9 months. The door opened, and her maid of honor, Jessica, her college roommate who'd flown in from Boston, poked her head in. "Nat, the photographer's here. You ready for first-look photos?" Natalie smiled, the expression as carefully constructed as everything else about this day. "Give me 5 minutes. You look absolutely stunning, by the way. Tyler's going to lose his mind when he sees you." Tyler's going to lose a lot more than his mind, Natalie thought as Jessica closed the door. She picked up her phone. One new message from Richard. "I'm here, sitting in the 3rd row as requested. Seeing you walk down that aisle to my son is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. But tonight, after everything settles, we'll talk. We'll figure out our future. I love you." Natalie's finger hovered over the keyboard. Part of her, a very small part, felt something almost like guilt. Richard hadn't started this. He'd been collateral damage in her war against Tyler, a weapon she'd sharpened and aimed at her target. But he'd also been complicit. He'd slept with his son's fiancée. He'd fallen in love with her while knowing she was engaged. He'd made choices, and choices had consequences. She typed back, "See you soon. If you're still watching, drop a comment right now. Have you ever been to a wedding where you knew the couple shouldn't get married? Have you ever stood there smiling while knowing a secret that would destroy everything? Because what you're about to witness is a masterclass in deception. Every vow, every smile, every tear, calculated. And 2 men in that room had no idea they were attending their own funeral. The Fairmont's grand ballroom had been transformed. Thousands of white roses climbed elegant pillars. Candlelight reflected off crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played soft classical music as guests filed in, whispering about how romantic the snow was, how beautiful everything looked. Tyler stood at the altar in his custom tuxedo, flanked by his groomsmen, college friends who'd spent the previous night getting drunk and telling increasingly embarrassing stories. He looked nervous in the way grooms are supposed to look nervous, excited, overwhelmed, ready to start his future. He'd checked his phone 17 times that morning. A had texted him at 6 a.m. "Good luck today. I'll miss you this weekend." Tyler had responded, "Just a formality. You know you're my real future." He'd deleted the exchange immediately, a habit so practiced it was automatic. Richard Morrison sat in the 3rd row on the groom's side, his expression carefully neutral. To anyone observing, he looked like a proud father, distinguished in his charcoal suit, posture perfect, watching his only son prepare to get married. No one could see the way his hands gripped his knees beneath the cover of the seat in front of him. No one could see the muscle twitching in his jaw. No one knew that the woman about to walk down the aisle had been in his bed 3 nights ago, whispering that she loved him, that they'd find a way through this impossible situation. The music shifted. Canon in D began, signaling the processional. Bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their dusty rose dresses. Tyler's groomsmen straightened their postures. The guests rose, And then Natalie appeared. She'd chosen to walk alone. No father to give her away, which she'd explained to Tyler as a feminist statement about giving herself to marriage. In reality, it was about control. She entered that room on her own terms, owing nothing to anyone. The dress was exquisite, fitted silk that skimmed her curves, a subtle train that whispered across the floor, off-shoulder sleeves that somehow managed to be both elegant and sensual. Her dark hair was swept up, revealing the graceful line of her neck. Her makeup was natural, glowing, perfect. She looked like a woman in love. She looked like a bride filled with joy. She looked like everything a wedding was supposed to be. Tyler's face transformed when he saw her, genuine emotion flooding his features. For a moment, beneath all his betrayals and lies, there was something real. He did love her, in whatever broken way he was capable of loving anyone. Richard's reaction was more subtle. His grip on his knees tightened until his knuckles went white. His breathing became carefully controlled, because he was watching the woman he loved walk down an aisle to marry his son, and he could do nothing but smile and pretend this was fine. Natalie walked slowly, her eyes fixed on Tyler. She didn't look at Richard, couldn't risk it, but she felt his presence like a pulse in her peripheral vision. When she reached the altar, Tyler took her hands. His palms were sweating. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Thank you," Natalie whispered back. The officiant, a friend of Tyler's family, a judge who'd known him since childhood, smiled warmly and began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Tyler Morrison and Natalie Brooks in holy matrimony." Natalie barely heard the opening remarks. She was focused on maintaining her expression, serene, happy, present. The perfect bride. "Marriage is a sacred bond," the judge continued, "built on trust, fidelity, and unwavering commitment. It asks us to be vulnerable, to be honest, to choose our partner every single day. Trust, fidelity, honesty." The irony was so thick Natalie almost laughed. Tyler was thinking about, even as he stood there holding Natalie's hands. Richard was thinking about the nights he'd spent with Natalie in hotel rooms across the city. And Natalie was thinking about how, in less than 4 hours, she would shatter both their worlds. "Tyler," the judge said, "please recite your vows." Tyler cleared his throat, pulling out a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded it. "Natalie," he began, "2 years ago, I met you at an art gallery, and you changed my life. You made me want to be better. You challenged me, supported me, believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. You cheated on me with 3 different women," Natalie thought while maintaining her soft smile. "You're my best friend, my partner, my home. And I promise to love you, to honor you, to be faithful to you for all the days of my life." Faithful. The word hung in the air, heavy with corruption. Several guests dabbed at their eyes. Tyler's groomsmen looked genuinely moved. Richard stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. "Natalie," the judge prompted, "your vows?" Natalie had memorized hers. She didn't need paper. "Tyler," she said, her voice clear and steady, "when we met, I believed in fairy tales. I believed that love was simple and pure and unconditional." She paused, letting the moment breathe. "You've taught me that love is actually much more complicated. It's choices. It's consequences. It's truth." She saw Tyler's brow furrow slightly. Was that a strange thing to say in wedding vows? But she continued before he could process it. "Today, I promise to show you truth, to give you exactly what you deserve, to ensure that everything hidden comes to light." Her smile never wavered. "I promise that you will never forget this day or what it means. I promise that our union will change everything." The guests seemed to find this romantic in an unconventional way. A few more people pulled out tissues. Tyler looked confused but pleased. That was beautiful, he whispered. Richard, 3 rows back, felt a cold tendril of unease curl in his stomach. Something about Natalie's vows had felt off, but he couldn't place why. The ring exchange was next. Gold bands engraved with their initials and the date. A date that would live in infamy once the truth came out. By the power vested in me by the state of Washington, the judge declared, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Tyler, you may kiss your bride. Tyler pulled Natalie close and kissed her deeply. The guests erupted in applause and cheers. Natalie kissed him back, tasting champagne from the pre-ceremony toast and lies from 2 years of deception. When they broke apart, Tyler was grinning. We did it, he whispered. You're mine. Yes, Natalie agreed softly. I'm yours. Until death do us part. They turned to face the guests as the judge announced, Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Tyler Morrison. More applause. The string quartet launched into a joyful recessional. Tyler and Natalie walked back down the aisle, waving at guests, smiling for the cameras. As they passed the 3rd row, Natalie's eyes met Richard's for just a fraction of a second. The pain in his expression was everything she'd engineered it to be. The reception was held in the hotel's crystal ballroom, decorated to match the ceremony. Romantic, elegant, expensive. A 5-tier cake dominated one corner. The head table overlooked the dance floor. Everything sparkled. During cocktail hour, Tyler was pulled away by his groomsmen for photos. Natalie found herself momentarily alone near the bar. Congratulations, Mrs. Morrison. Richard's voice behind her was low, controlled. She turned to find him holding a glass of scotch, his expression carefully neutral for anyone watching. To observers, they were simply father-in-law and new daughter-in-law having a polite conversation. Thank you, Richard. That was quite a ceremony. His gray eyes searched hers. Interesting vows. I meant every word. I know. He took a sip of his drink. We need to talk. After tonight. After tonight, Natalie interrupted quietly. Everything changes. Yes, I know this is complicated, but we'll figure it out. Tyler will be hurt, but in the long run. Richard. Natalie placed her hand on his arm, a gesture that could seem daughterly to anyone watching, but her grip was firm. Trust me, just a few more hours. Then all truths will be revealed. Before Richard could respond, Tyler appeared, slightly drunk from groomsmen shots. Dad, and my beautiful wife. He put his arm around Natalie's waist possessively. Thanks for coming. I know this isn't easy for you. Richard's jaw tightened. Why wouldn't it be easy? You know, being alone at a wedding. Makes you think about Mom, probably. Tyler's words were slurred just enough to reveal how much he'd had to drink. But hey, maybe you'll meet someone. Plenty of single women here tonight. The irony was so brutal that Natalie almost felt sorry for both of them. I'm fine, Tyler, Richard said evenly. Congratulations. You're a lucky man. Don't I know it? Tyler kissed Natalie's temple. Come on, babe. Time for our first dance. If you made it this far, I need to ask, do you believe in karma? Do you think people who betray others deserve to have their lives destroyed? Drop your thoughts in the comments because what's about to happen next will test your moral compass. The first dance was to a song Tyler had chosen, something by John Legend about love and forever. They swayed together under the chandeliers while guests watched and cameras flashed. I love you so much, Tyler murmured in her ear. I can't believe you're actually my wife. Believe it, Natalie said. Everything's going to be perfect now. We'll have an amazing honeymoon. Come back. Start our life together. Maybe start trying for kids soon. Natalie felt the slight swell of her belly against him, invisible beneath the dress, but present. About that. About what? Kids. We should talk about that tonight. In private. Tyler pulled back to look at her, confused. What do you mean? Just that there are some things we need to discuss. Important things. She smiled, kissing his cheek. But not now. Tonight, after everything settles down. You're being mysterious. I'm being practical. Tonight is for celebration. Later is for truth. The father-daughter dance was next, except Natalie didn't have a father present, so tradition dictated a dance with her new father-in-law. Richard approached as the DJ announced, and now, the bride will dance with Richard Morrison, father of the groom. They stepped on a dance floor together. Richard's hand settled on her waist, the same waist he'd gripped 3 nights ago while she'd straddled him in his bed, whispering that she loved him. "This is torture," Richard murmured as they began to move. "I know. I can't keep pretending. After tonight, we need to tell him. We will. When? Soon. Very soon." "Natalie," his grip tightened. "I need to know you're not getting cold feet. About us. About what we are." She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Richard, I promise you, by the end of tonight, everyone will know exactly what we are." The song ended. They separated. Richard returned to his table, and Natalie was swept away by bridesmaids wanting photos. The evening progressed in a blur of traditional moments. Cake cutting, bouquet toss, toast from friends. Tyler's best man told a rambling, drunken story about their college years. Natalie's maid of honor gave a touching speech about friendship and finding true love. Through it all, Natalie smiled and laughed and played her role perfectly. Tyler got progressively drunker, his arm around her waist becoming heavier, his words more slurred. "You know what?" he said around 9 p.m., leaning heavily against her. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't deserve you." Finally, Natalie thought, something true. Richard watched from across the room, nursing his scotch, looking every bit the proud but lonely father. Several women had approached him throughout the evening, friends of the family, single colleagues, but he politely deflected every conversation. Around 10 p.m., as the reception began winding down, Richard found a moment alone with Natalie near the terrace doors. "I'm leaving soon," he said quietly. "This is too painful. But call me. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever you're ready to talk about our next steps." "I'll call you tonight," Natalie promised. "I guarantee it." "Tonight? But Tyler." "We'll know everything by then," Natalie said. Her voice was calm, almost clinical. "Trust me, Richard. By midnight, all secrets will be revealed." Before he could ask what she meant, Tyler stumbled over. "Dad, you're not leaving yet, are you?" "Soon. I have an early morning. Stay for one more drink. One more drink with your son and your new daughter-in-law." Tyler's grin was sloppy, genuine. "Come on. Family bonding." The 3 of them stood there, a triangle of deception, so complete it was almost architectural in its precision. Tyler drunk and oblivious. Richard sober and conflicted. Natalie calm and lethal. "To family," Tyler said, raising his glass. "To truth," Natalie countered, raising hers. "To..." Richard hesitated, looking between them. "To whatever comes next." They drank. An hour later, the reception officially ended. Guests departed with well wishes and confetti. Tyler's groomsmen loaded him into the car. He was far too drunk to drive, while Natalie thanked the wedding coordinator and ensured everything was handled. Richard left without saying goodbye, his eyes finding Natalie's across the ballroom one final time. She nodded slightly. A promise. Or a threat. By 11:30 p.m., Tyler and Natalie were finally alone in the bridal suite. The hotel had prepared it beautifully. Rose petals on the bed, champagne chilling, soft music playing. A perfect wedding night setting. Tyler collapsed onto the couch, tie loosened, jacket discarded. "I need water. And aspirin. So much aspirin." "I'll get it," Natalie said, moving to the bathroom. She stared at herself in the mirror. The bride looking back at her was immaculate. Makeup still perfect, hair still elegant, dress still pristine. In her clutch, carefully hidden, were 3 pregnancy tests. All positive. All taken over the past week and saved for this exact moment. Also in her clutch, her phone, with a folder containing screenshots, photos, videos. 9 months of evidence. And one more thing. Divorce papers, pre-filled and ready to file Monday morning. She pulled out the pregnancy tests and carried them back to the main room. Tyler was sprawled on the couch, eyes closed. "Did you find aspirin?" "I found something more interesting," Natalie said, her voice taking on an edge Tyler had never heard before. He opened his eyes, registered what she was holding. His face went from confusion to shock to horror in the span of 3 seconds. What is that?" Natalie held up the 3 positive pregnancy tests, letting them catch the light. "Congratulations, Tyler," she said, voice cold and precise as a surgical blade. "You're going to be a brother." The color drained from Tyler's face. "What?" "Your father," Natalie continued, stepping closer. "The baby is your father's." Silence crashed into the room like a tidal wave. Tyler's mouth opened and closed. No sound emerged. "I'm pregnant, Tyler. 9 weeks along. Conceived around mid-October. You and I haven't had unprotected sex since, well, ever. But your father and I—" She smiled, small, cruel, satisfied. "We've been very careful about everything except that. This is a joke." Tyler stood up too fast, stumbling. "This is some kind of sick wedding night prank. Do I look like I'm joking?" Tyler stared at her, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Something cold and calculating and utterly foreign. You're saying you and my father." "For 9 months, Natalie confirmed. "Every Thursday. Sometimes more. Hotels. His house. Once in the guest room of this apartment. The bed you've never slept in, but your father has." Tyler's face went from white to green. "I'm going to be sick. The bathroom's through there." He didn't make it. He vomited into the decorative trash can, his body heaving, his entire world imploding. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed and streaming. "Why? Why would you? You really want to know?" Natalie sat down on the arm of the couch, still holding the pregnancy tests like evidence in a trial. "Let me tell you a story, Tyler, about a woman who discovered her fiancé was cheating on her with at least 3 different women. A woman who read texts where you called them your real future. A woman who watched you lie to her face every single day while planning a wedding to a man who didn't even have the decency to be faithful." Understanding dawned in Tyler's eyes, horror and realization mixing together. "You knew," he whispered. "I've known since April. 9 months, Tyler. 9 months I've been playing you, playing your father, building this perfect trap." She stood up, walked to the window overlooking the city. "You thought you could betray me and I just— what? Cry? Leave quietly? Let you move on to or K or Seattle Girl? How did you? Your laptop. You left it open. Messages app right there for anyone to see." She turned back to face him. "You got careless, Tyler. Too confident in your own cleverness. Too certain I'd never question you." Tyler was shaking now, whether from shock or rage or horror. Natalie couldn't tell. "So you slept with my father? That's revenge," Natalie offered. "Justice? Karma? Choose whichever word helps you sleep at night. Which will be difficult, by the way, since after I file for divorce on Monday, you'll be losing half of everything you own." "Divorce? Did you think I actually wanted to stay married to you?" She laughed, brittle sharp. "Tyler, I married you for exactly one reason. So I could legally destroy you. Community property laws in Washington are very favorable to the wrong spouse. And I have 9 months of evidence of your infidelity. Screenshots, recordings, everything. But you cheated too. With my father. After you cheated first. The timeline is very clear. I have evidence of your affairs dating back to last October. My relationship with Richard didn't start until May." She smiled. "Legally, I'm a victim here. You're the serial cheater who drove your faithful fiancé into the arms of another man." Tyler's mind was visibly trying to process this. "You planned this. All of it. Every single moment. The lunches with your father. The slow seduction. Getting pregnant. Moving up the wedding date. She walked over to him, crouched down so they were eye level. I've spent 9 months architecting your destruction, Tyler. And you walked right into it. The baby is Richard's. We'll do a paternity test if you need confirmation, but you know I'm telling the truth. You can see it in my face. Tyler did see it. The cold certainty. The total lack of remorse. Does he know? Tyler asked hoarsely. Does my father know the baby is his? He knows about the pregnancy. He thinks. She paused, considering. He thinks I'm going to tell you everything gently. That we're going to have a mature conversation about our complicated feelings. He's in love with me, you see. Thinks we have a future together. Do you? It was the first intelligent question Tyler had asked. Natalie stood up, considering it. I don't know, she said honestly. Richard wasn't part of the original plan. He was supposed to be a weapon I used against you. But things got complicated. You're a monster, Tyler whispered. No, I'm someone you underestimated. She moved toward the door. I'm going to leave now. You can stay here, think about your choices, contemplate how thoroughly I've dismantled your life. On Monday, you'll receive divorce papers. Your lawyer will contact you about asset division. And your father. She paused at the door. Your father is about to have a very interesting phone call. Wait. But Natalie was already gone, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like a judge's gavel. In the hallway, she pulled out her phone and called Richard. He answered on the first ring. Natalie, are you okay? Did you tell him? I told him everything, Natalie said, her voice steady. He knows about us. About the baby. About all of it. What? Richard's voice went from concern to panicked in an instant. You told him tonight? On your wedding night? That was always the plan, Richard. I thought you understood that. I thought. He stopped, recalibrating. Where are you? Leaving the hotel. We need to talk. Your place in 20 minutes. She hung up before he could respond. The elevator ride down was surreal. Natalie still wore her wedding dress, still looked like a happy bride, but her eyes were the eyes of someone who'd just detonated a bomb and was walking calmly away from the explosion. The real question, the one she'd been avoiding for months, was whether she'd destroyed herself in the process of destroying Tyler, and whether Richard would still want her once he understood exactly what kind of person she'd become. Richard Morrison's penthouse had never seemed so cold. Natalie stood in the living room, the same room where they'd shared poetry and wine, where they'd fallen into bed together for the first time, where Richard had whispered that she'd saved him from loneliness. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the sound, dark water reflecting the city lights like shattered glass. Richard paced near the windows, still wearing his suit from the wedding, his careful composure fractured into something raw and unsteady. Explain, he said without looking at her. Explain to me what just happened. Natalie set her clutch on the side table, the clutch that contained pregnancy tests, evidence, divorce papers, the artifacts of her revenge. I told Tyler the truth, she said simply. About us. About the baby. About everything. On his wedding night. Richard's voice was flat, processing. You told him on his wedding night that his wife had been sleeping with his father, that she's carrying his father's child. Yes. Jesus Christ, Natalie. Richard finally turned to face her. His eyes held something she hadn't seen before. Not desire, not affection, but the beginning of horror. Do you understand what you've done? I've done what I needed to do. What you needed. He stopped himself, visibly trying to maintain control. Tyler just texted me 17 times. The messages are, he pulled out his phone, scrolled through. He's destroying his hotel room, threatening to kill himself, threatening to kill me. The level of damage is exactly what he deserves. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and unforgiving. Richard stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. What happened to you? Tyler happened to me. He cheated on me for over a year. Multiple women. While planning our wedding. While promising me forever. Natalie's voice remained steady, controlled. So I chose to repay him in kind. By destroying him completely? By using me. Richard's voice cracked slightly. By using me as a weapon against my own son. You weren't supposed to fall in love, Natalie said quietly. That wasn't part of the plan. The silence that followed was suffocating. What? Richard's face went pale. The plan was simple. Seduce you. Get pregnant. Reveal everything on the wedding night. File for divorce. Take half of Tyler's assets. Destroy his relationship with you as collateral damage. She met his eyes without flinching. You falling in love with me was an unexpected complication. Richard took a step backward, as if she'd physically struck him. Ew. This was all calculated? Every moment, every conversation, every touch, every time you told me you loved me. Not every moment, Natalie admitted. Things got complicated. You were supposed to be a means to an end, Richard. But you were kind. You saw me. You made me feel. She stopped herself. It doesn't matter what I felt. What matters is that Tyler paid for what he did. At what cost? Richard's voice was hoarse. You've destroyed my relationship with my son. You've lied to me for 9 months. He gestured helplessly. You're carrying my child under false pretenses. Everything between us was a lie. Not everything. Name one thing that was real. Natalie opened her mouth, then closed it. The honest answer was complicated, and Richard deserved honesty after 9 months of manipulation. I don't know, she finally said. I don't know where the performance ended and reality began. Maybe they're the same thing now. Before we continue, I need to ask you something. Drop a comment right now. When does revenge go too far? Is there a line between justice and cruelty? Or does betrayal erase all boundaries? Because what you're watching isn't just a story about revenge. It's a question about what we're willing to become in order to win. Richard sank into a chair, his head in his hands. When he looked up again, his eyes were red-rimmed. I loved you, he said quietly. For the first time since Catherine died, I felt alive again. I felt seen. And it was all theater, all manipulation. I told you things got complicated. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't tell me about complications. Don't try to soften this. You used me. You weaponized my loneliness, my grief, my feelings for you. And you aimed all of it at destroying my son. Your son who you barely have a relationship with, Natalie countered. Your son who you criticize constantly. Your son who resents you. He's still my son. Richard's shout echoed through the penthouse. And you've taken whatever slim chance we had at rebuilding our relationship, and you've incinerated it. For what? For revenge on cheating? For making him hurt the way he hurt you? Yes, Natalie said simply. Was it worth it? Richard asked. This destruction you've caused, this scorched earth approach, was it worth sacrificing your own humanity? The question landed like a punch. Natalie felt something shift in her chest, something she'd been pushing down for 9 months. I don't know yet, she whispered. Richard stood up, walked to the bar, poured himself a scotch with shaking hands. He drank it in one swallow, then poured another. The baby, he set his back to her. Is it really mine? Yes. You're sure? Tyler and I haven't had unprotected sex since before I discovered his cheating. I made sure of it. Birth control, timing, everything. Every time with you is unprotected. The dates line up perfectly. So you plan to get pregnant. To trap me. To ensure the maximum damage to Tyler. Natalie corrected. You weren't supposed to be trapped. You were supposed to be horrified, disgusted, done with me once you realized what I'd done. And instead you're here, talking to me, not throwing me out. Richard turned to face her, and the expression on his face was devastating. Love and hurt and rage, all warring for dominance. Do you have any idea, he said slowly, how much I hate that I still love you right now, even knowing what you are, what you've done? Natalie felt something crack inside her chest. Richard. No, let me finish. He set down his glass. You've destroyed my relationship with my son. You've revealed yourself, as someone capable of breathtaking cruelty and manipulation. You've lied to me for 9 months. And his voice broke. I still look at you and want to believe there's something salvageable here. That's how thoroughly you've played me. I didn't expect to care about you, Natalie said. And it was the most honest thing she'd said all night. That wasn't part of the plan. But somewhere between the lunches and the poetry and the late-night conversations, something shifted. I started to see you as a person, not a tool. But not enough to stop, Richard observed bitterly. Not enough to reconsider this revenge plot. Not enough to show mercy. Would you have, if Catherine had betrayed you the way Tyler betrayed me? The question hung in the air. Richard's jaw tightened. I don't know, he admitted. But I'd like to think I wouldn't have dragged innocent people into my vengeance. I wouldn't have created child as a weapon. The child wasn't supposed to be a weapon, Natalie said quietly. The child was supposed to be proof. Evidence. Something Tyler couldn't deny or rationalize away. And now, what is the child now? Natalie's hand moved unconsciously to her still flat stomach. I don't know. Richard's phone buzzed. Then again, and again. He glanced at the screen, his face darkening. Tyler's at the hotel bar, drinking, making a scene. He looked up at Natalie. You need to leave. I'm going to him. Richard. No. You've done enough damage for one night. His voice was cold now, protective instincts for his son overriding whatever feelings he had for her. I need to do damage control before he does something he can't take back. He cheated on me, Natalie reminded him, for over a year, with multiple women. He deserves to hurt. Yes. To be confronted? Absolutely. To have his life systematically destroyed by someone he loved? I'm not sure anyone deserves that. Richard grabbed his coat. I'm going to my son. When I get back, I want you gone. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. A hotel. A friend's. Mars. Just not here. He left without another word, the door closing behind him with a finality that felt like an ending. Natalie stood alone in the penthouse, still wearing her wedding dress, still holding the evidence of her revenge in her clutch, and finally, allowed herself to feel something other than cold calculation. She'd won. She destroyed Tyler. She claimed Richard. She'd executed her plan flawlessly. So why did she feel like she'd lost everything that mattered? She walked to the windows, looked out at the city lights blurring through sudden tears. Her reflection in the glass showed a bride, beautiful, victorious, utterly alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. You destroyed me. I hope it was worth it. I hope you can live with what you've become. Then another, from Jessica, her maid of honor. Tyler's friend just called me. He said something happened. Are you okay? Call me. Natalie ignored both messages. Instead, she pulled up her photo gallery. 9 months of documentation. Screenshots of Tyler's infidelity. Photos of her and Richard. Videos she'd recorded for evidence. A digital archive of destruction. She should have felt triumphant looking at it all. Instead, she felt nauseous. Richard found Tyler in the hotel bar at 1:47 a.m., still in his tuxedo pants and dress shirt, now wrinkled and stained. 3 empty glasses sat in front of him. He was working on a 4th. Tyler. Richard slid onto the bar stool beside him. Tyler didn't look at him. Come to gloat. Come and tell me how you won. How you stole my wife. I came to make sure you're okay. I'm spectacular. Tyler's laugh was bitter, broken. My wife just told me she's been fucking my father for 9 months. That she's pregnant with his baby. That our entire relationship was a lie designed to destroy me. But hey, at least the wedding was nice. The bartender glanced over nervously. Richard caught his eye and shook his head. They weren't leaving yet. Tyler, I need you to listen to me. Why? So you can explain how it happened? How you accidentally fell into bed with my fiancée. How you just couldn't help yourself. Tyler finally turned to face his father, and Richard saw a raw agony in his son's eyes. You knew, Dad. You knew I was going to marry her, and you did it anyway. I didn't know about her plan, Richard said quietly. I swear to you, I had no idea this was revenge. I thought. He stopped, realizing how pathetic it sounded. I thought she loved me. Join the club. We're both idiots. Tyler signaled the bartender for another drink. Richard intercepted the order. You've had enough. Don't. Tyler's voice went dangerous. Don't you dare pair me now. You lost that right when you slept with a woman I was supposed to spend my life with. You cheated on her, Richard said bluntly. For over a year. She found out. This is retaliation. So I deserve this. I deserve to have my father, my own father, betray me. I deserve to be humiliated on my wedding night. You deserve consequences for your actions. Whether those consequences should have been this. Richard trailed off. I don't know. Tyler's eyes were glassy with alcohol and tears. Did you love her? Or was it just about screwing me over? I loved her, Richard admitted. I still do, God help me. She made me feel alive again after years of numbness. She saw me as a person, not just your father or a CEO. Or so I thought. It was all fake, Dad. Everything about her was designed to destroy us both. She's not who we thought she was. I know. They sat in silence. Two men who'd been played by the same woman. Their relationship, already tenuous, now shattered beyond repair. I cheated, Tyler finally said, voice small. I was stupid and selfish and I hurt her. But what she did, what you both did, that's so much worse. Is it? Richard asked quietly. She found evidence of you betraying her for over a year. Multiple women. You called them your real future. You were going to marry her while maintaining your affairs. So, she decided to become a monster to punish me for being a cheater? That's justice. I didn't say it was justice. I said it was consequences. Richard rubbed his face, exhausted. You hurt her, Tyler. Badly. And she chose to hurt you back in the most devastating way possible. It doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable. Tyler laughed, hollow, broken. You're defending her. Even now. Even after learning she manipulated you for 9 months just to get back at me. I'm not defending her. I'm trying to understand how he got here. Richard looked at his son, really looked at him. At the pain, the betrayal, the destruction written across his features. And I'm realizing that we share the blame. You started this by cheating. I continued it by sleeping with your fiancée. And Natalie finished it by orchestrating all of our downfalls. The baby, Tyler said suddenly. She said it's yours. She says the timeline proves it. Dates, birth control, conception window. Richard's voice was carefully neutral. I believe her. So you're going to be a father. At 62. To a child you created with my wife. My wife, Dad. Ex-wife soon. She's filing for divorce Monday. Tyler's laugh was edging toward hysterical. Of course she is. Take half my assets. Destroy my relationship with you. Blow up my life. Perfect execution. Tyler, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Tyler turned to face his father fully. If you had known, from the beginning, that she was using you to get revenge on me, would you have done it anyway? Richard wanted to say no immediately. Wanted to claim moral high ground, paternal loyalty, basic human decency. But he'd promised honesty. I don't know, he finally said. If I'd known from the start, probably not. But by the time I was deep enough to be used, I was already in love with her. And love makes us do unconscionable things. Love. Tyler spat the word. You call what you had with her love. What would you call it? Betrayal. Manipulation. Destruction. Tyler stood up, swaying slightly. I'm leaving. Going to find a hotel somewhere. Anywhere that isn't here or anywhere she's been. Tyler, wait. No. I'm done. Done with this conversation. Done with this night. Done with both of you. He pulled out his wallet, threw cash on the bar. Congratulations, Dad. You won. You got the girl. Hope she was worth your only son. She's not. I don't want her anymore. Not after learning the truth. Tyler paused, something flickering in his eyes. Really? Because 5 minutes ago you said you still loved her. Both things can be true. Yeah. Tyler's smile was sad, broken. That's the real tragedy, isn't it? We both still love someone who never really existed. He walked away, leaving Richard alone at the bar with 3 empty glasses and the wreckage of his family. Natalie didn't leave Richard's penthouse immediately. Instead, she did something she hadn't allowed herself to do in 9 months. She let herself feel everything. The apartment was silent except for the distant sound of the city, car horns, sirens, the ambient hum of Seattle at night. She sat on Richard's couch, still in her wedding dress, and finally let the walls come down. The tears came first, hot, unexpected, overwhelming. She'd held them back through months of manipulation, through the wedding ceremony, through the confrontations. But alone in the dark, they poured out with a force that shocked her. She cried for the relationship she'd lost when Tyler betrayed her, for the woman she'd been before she discovered his infidelity, the one who believed in love, who trusted easily, who hadn't yet learned to weaponize intimacy. She cried for Richard, who'd been genuinely lonely and vulnerable, who'd fallen in love with a version of her that was part truth and part performance, who was now destroying himself, trying to protect a son who probably hated him. She cried for Tyler, despite everything, not because he didn't deserve consequences, but because the consequences she'd engineered were so complete, so devastating, that they'd probably broken something in him permanently. And she cried for herself, for the realization that in becoming the architect of their destruction, she destroyed herself most of all. What was she now? Not the woman Tyler had fallen in love with. That woman was gone, vaporized the moment she'd read those text messages. Not the woman Richard thought he knew. That woman had been a carefully constructed illusion. She was something new, something harder, something capable of extraordinary cruelty in service of justice. The question was, could she live with that person? Her phone buzzed. Multiple messages coming in. Jessica, seriously, call me. Tyler's groomsmen are saying crazy things. What happened? Unknown number. This is Tyler's lawyer. We need to talk. Her mother. Sweetheart, how was the wedding? Call when you can. Natalie stared at the messages, particularly the last one. She'd have to tell her mother eventually. Would have to explain that the wedding was lovely and the marriage lasted approximately 4 hours before she detonated it from the inside. She opened her email instead, drafted a message to her lawyer. Mark, I need to file for divorce immediately. Monday morning. Tyler Morrison. Grounds. Infidelity. I have extensive documentation. Also need to discuss property division and, she paused, stared at the cursor, and custody arrangements. I'm pregnant. Her hand moved to her stomach again. 9 weeks along. A cluster of cells that would eventually become a child. A child who would be born into the wreckage of this war she'd waged. A child who deserved better than this. The thought stopped her cold. She'd been so focused on revenge, on justice, on making Tyler pay for what he'd done, that she hadn't really processed the human cost. Not just to Tyler or Richard, or even herself, but to an innocent child who hadn't asked to be conceived as a weapon. I'm sorry, she whispered to the small life inside her. I'm so sorry. It was 3 a.m. when Richard returned to the penthouse. He found Natalie still on the couch, no longer crying but hollow-eyed and distant. I told you to leave, he said, but there was no heat in it. Just exhaustion. I know. I will. She looked up at him. How is he? Destroyed. Drunk. Probably going to do something stupid. Richard removed his coat, poured himself another scotch. He said he still loves you. Despite everything. We both do. That's the real cruelty of what you've done, Natalie. You made us love a ghost. I'm not a ghost. I'm right here. Are you? Because the woman I fell in love with would never have orchestrated something this cruel. That woman was kind and thoughtful and genuine. But maybe that woman never existed. She existed, Natalie said quietly. She just died the day she discovered Tyler's betrayal. And what's left is whatever I've become. Richard sat down in the chair across from her, studied her with those gray eyes that had once looked at her with such warmth. "Do you regret it?" he asked. Natalie considered lying, considered giving the answer that would salvage something, anything, from this wreckage. "I don't know yet," she said instead. "Ask me in a year. I won't be here in a year." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm leaving Seattle, selling the firm, selling this place, moving somewhere I can start over. Maybe Europe, maybe just Portland, somewhere without memories of you and Tyler and this entire nightmare." "You can't sell the firm. Morrison and Associates is your life." "My life is in ruins," Richard said flatly. "My son hates me. The woman I love is a stranger. I've compromised every value I thought I had. The firm is just a building. Buildings can be sold. And the baby?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Richard took a long drink. "That's up to you. If you want me involved, I'll establish a trust, handle financial obligations, arrange visitation. But I can't." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't be a father to this child, Natalie. Not after how it was conceived. Not knowing it was created as part of your revenge plot. The baby didn't ask for any of this. Neither did I." Richard's eyes were hard now. "You made choices. You weaponized intimacy, pregnancy, love. You'll have to live with the consequences of those choices. So you're abandoning your child?" "I'm protecting myself from someone who's proven capable of extraordinary manipulation. There's a difference." He stood up. "You need to leave. Now. Take whatever time you need to figure out your next steps, but do it somewhere else." Natalie stood slowly, her wedding dress rustling. She looked absurd. A bride at 3 a.m. in a penthouse, mascara streaked, holding a clutch full of evidence and destruction. "For what it's worth," she said at the door, "I didn't plan to hurt you. You were just supposed to be a means to an end. That doesn't make it better, Natalie. That makes it worse." She nodded, opened the door, paused. "I did love you," she said without turning around. "Not at first, not when I planned this, but somewhere along the way, it became real. I don't expect you to believe me, but it's true." "It doesn't matter," Richard said wearily. "Real or performed, love or manipulation, the end result is the same. My son is destroyed. Our relationship is destroyed. And you got your revenge." "Did I?" It was a genuine question, because standing there in the doorway, wedding dress dragging on the floor, pregnant with a child that would be born into chaos, having demolished two men's lives in service of vengeance, Natalie honestly didn't know if she'd won or lost. She left without waiting for an answer. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and rain. Typical Seattle weather that matched the collective mood of everyone involved in the wedding night disaster. Natalie filed for divorce at 9 a.m. Her lawyer, Mark Shun, had reviewed the evidence over the weekend and delivered his assessment with professional detachment. "You have a strong case. Timeline clearly shows his infidelity preceded your relationship with Richard Morrison. Text evidence is damning. You'll get significant property division, probably 60-40 in your favor, given the circumstances." "In custody?" Natalie asked. Mark had looked uncomfortable. "The baby is Richard's, not Tyler's. Tyler has no legal claim to custody. But if Richard wants involvement, that's a separate negotiation. He doesn't. Then you have sole custody by default, though you should be prepared for character questions during the divorce proceedings. Tyler's lawyer will argue that your actions demonstrate poor judgment and moral character." "Let them," Natalie had said. "I have evidence. They have opinions." But sitting in Mark's office, signing papers that would legally end her marriage before it had really begun, Natalie felt the weight of those opinions. She'd won the legal battle, but in the court of public opinion, the story would be far more complicated. Woman discovers fiancé's infidelity, seduces his father, gets pregnant, destroys entire family on wedding night. Not exactly sympathetic. Tyler's response to the divorce filing came through his lawyer by 2 p.m. Acceptance of the divorce, contest of property division, and a personal note that Mark read with obvious discomfort. Tell your client that she's won. She's destroyed me, destroyed my relationship with my father, and taken everything I cared about. I hope it brings her peace, though I doubt it will. People who build their happiness on other people's suffering never find what they're looking for. Eloquent for someone who spent the weekend drunk. Mark had commented. Natalie had said nothing, because Tyler's note had landed like a punch to her already bruised conscience. Richard's lawyer reached out to Natalie on Tuesday with a formal proposal. Full financial support for the child, trust fund, medical expenses, education, living costs, no custody rights requested, no visitation rights requested, one condition: complete non-disclosure agreement. Neither party would speak publicly about the affair, the pregnancy, or the circumstances of conception. He's buying his way out of fatherhood, Natalie had said when Mark explained the offer. He's protecting himself legally and emotionally from someone who used him as a weapon. Mark had corrected. From his perspective, you're dangerous. He wants distance. And if I refuse, he'll still provide financial support. State law requires it. But he'll fight you on every interaction, every decision, every boundary. Accept the NDA and the money, Natalie. Let him go. She'd signed the agreement that afternoon, not because she wanted his money, though the trust fund was substantial enough to ensure her child would never want for anything material. She'd signed because Richard was right to want distance from her. She was dangerous. 3 weeks after the wedding night, Natalie was settling into her new reality. She'd moved into a condo downtown, away from the apartment she'd shared with Tyler. She told her mother a carefully edited version of events. Tyler cheated. I filed for divorce. I'm pregnant. It's complicated. She'd returned to work, fielding curious questions from colleagues with professional detachment. Life was moving forward. Slowly, painfully, but forward. She was leaving her condo for a prenatal appointment when she found Tyler sitting on the steps outside her building. He looked terrible. Thinner, unshaven, wearing jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt that suggested he'd stopped caring about appearances. But his eyes were clear, sober, at least. "What are you doing here?" Natalie asked, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "I needed to talk to you. Your lawyer said you'd be here around 2. My lawyer shouldn't be telling you my schedule." He didn't. I guessed. Tyler stood up, and Natalie was struck by how defeated he looked. The golden boy charm was gone, replaced by something raw and broken. "I'm not here to hurt you, or threaten you. I need to understand." "Understand what? Why?" Tyler's voice cracked slightly. "Why you didn't just leave? Why you didn't confront me, scream at me, break up with me? Why did you have to destroy everything so completely?" Natalie considered walking past him, getting in her car, driving away from this conversation that couldn't possibly end well. But she owed him this, at least. An honest answer to an honest question. "Because you humiliated me," she said quietly. "For over a year, you made a fool of me. You let me plan a wedding, pick out flowers, send invitations, all while you were telling other women they were your real future. You stole time from my life I can never get back. You made me question my judgment, my worth, my reality. So you decided to do the same to me. But worse." "Yes. Was it worth it?" Tyler asked, and it was the same question Richard had posed. "Is my suffering equal to the satisfaction you got from revenge?" Natalie met his eyes, brown and sad and genuinely curious. "No," she admitted. "It's not. Because revenge doesn't actually heal the hurt. It just creates more hurt. And now I'm pregnant with your father's child. I've destroyed your family. And I've become someone I don't recognize in the mirror. So no, Tyler, it wasn't worth it." Tyler absorbed this, nodding slowly. "Then why did you do it?" "Because in the moment I discovered your betrayal, I wasn't thinking about healing or growth or being the bigger person. I was thinking about making you hurt the way I hurt. And I succeeded. And now I have to live with that success for the rest of my life." They stood there on the steps of her building, 2 people who'd loved each other once, now strangers bound by destruction. "I cheated on you. Tyler finally said. I was wrong. I was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed your trust. You deserved better than that. And you deserve consequences. But maybe not nuclear ones. Maybe. Tyler looked at her stomach, where a small swell was just beginning to show. My father's kid. That's going to be my half-sibling. Do you understand how fucked up that is? I do. Will you let me? He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. That's insane. What? I was going to ask if I could be involved. With the kid. As an uncle or something. But that's crazy. Why would you let me anywhere near your child after what you did to me? Natalie stared at him, genuinely surprised. You want that? After everything? It's my father's child, Tyler said simply. The only sibling I'll ever have. And despite everything you've done to me, I don't think you're a bad person, Natalie. I think you're a hurt person who made destructive choices. But I don't think you're evil. The kindness in his words hit her harder than any of his anger would have. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. Tyler pulled out a card, handed it to her. That's my new number. New phone, new apartment, new everything. If you ever want to talk about the baby, about anything, call me. Tyler, I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not saying we can be friends. But I'm saying that maybe there's a way forward that isn't just mutual destruction. He started walking away, then turned back. Oh, and Natalie, my dad's leaving town, selling the firm. He told me yesterday. So whatever you were hoping to build with him, it's not happening. He left before she could respond. Natalie stood there, card in hand, feeling the foundation of her victory shift beneath her feet. She'd won. She'd gotten her revenge. She destroyed Tyler and claimed Richard and executed her plan perfectly. So why did she feel like she'd just been offered something she couldn't name and might have just lost her only chance to take it? The ultrasound screen showed a tiny fist, perfectly formed, waving in the amniotic fluid like a greeting. Strong heartbeat, Dr. Patterson said, smiling at Natalie. 28 weeks. Everything looks healthy. Do you want to know the sex? Natalie stared at the screen, at this small life she'd created as a weapon and was now trying desperately to see as a person. A person who deserved better than the circumstances of their conception. It's a girl, she said quietly. She'd known for months but hadn't told anyone, keeping this one secret to herself, something private in a life that had become so public, so dissected. A girl, Dr. Patterson confirmed. Have you thought about names? Names. Identity. The future. Natalie had thought about little Els for 6 months. It was now June, 6 months since the wedding night that had detonated 3 lives. Seattle had moved through winter into spring and now early summer. The city blooming with possibility, while Natalie's belly bloomed with consequence. The divorce had been finalized in March. Tyler had contested the property division, but ultimately the evidence of his infidelity had been too damning. Natalie had walked away with 60% of their shared assets. The condo they bought together, half his savings, a significant settlement. Enough to ensure financial security for her and the baby. Tyler had moved to Portland, started over at a smaller architectural firm, cut ties with Seattle, with his father, with everything that reminded him of Natalie and the destruction she'd caused. Richard had done exactly what he'd promised. Sold Morrison and Associates to a San Francisco conglomerate for an obscene amount of money, liquidated his Seattle assets, and disappeared. Natalie had heard through her lawyer that he'd bought a villa in Tuscany, that he was dating someone, that he'd effectively erased his former life and built a new one an ocean away. The trust fund he'd established for the baby remained untouched in an account Natalie couldn't access until the child turned 18. His one ongoing obligation, fulfilled from a distance. Both men gone, scattered to different corners of the world by the explosion she'd detonated. And Natalie remained in Seattle, growing larger each day, preparing for motherhood while grappling with the question that had haunted her for 6 months. Who was she now? Natalie was leaving the doctor's office, ultrasound photos in her purse, when she nearly collided with someone in the parking lot. Sorry, she looked up and froze. Tyler stood there, car keys in hand, looking as surprised as she felt. He looked better than the last time she'd seen him. Healthier. The hollows under his eyes had filled in, and he'd regained some of the weight he'd lost in the aftermath. He wore jeans and a casual button-down, his hair styled, his jaw clean-shaven. He looked like someone who was healing. "Natalie," he said, surprise giving way to something more complicated. "I didn't expect. I'm just here visiting a friend." Total coincidence. Right. Coincidence. She moved a step around him. "Wait." Tyler's hand moved as if to touch her arm, then dropped. "How are you?" "How's that?" He gestured vaguely at her obvious pregnancy. "I'm fine." "She's fine. Everything's fine." Tyler's face softened. "It's a girl." Natalie hadn't meant to tell him. The information had just slipped out, a casualness born from exhaustion and prenatal hormones. Yes. They stood there in the parking lot, the June sun warm on their faces, the sound of traffic in the distance. Two people who'd been married for approximately 4 hours, 6 months ago, now strangers discussing the child one of them had helped create through an act of revenge. "Can we talk?" Tyler asked suddenly. "Not here, but somewhere. Coffee or lunch, or—" He trailed off. "I know I have no right to ask, but I've been thinking about what I said, about wanting to be involved. And I meant it. Tyler, just coffee. 1 hour. If you hate it, you never have to see me again." Natalie should have said no. Should have gotten in her car and driven away from this complication. But something in Tyler's expression, genuine, vulnerable, offering something she couldn't quite name, made her pause. 1 hour, she heard herself say. "There's a cafe 2 blocks from here. Drop a comment right now. Do people who hurt each other beyond repair ever find their way to forgiveness? Can there be healing after destruction, or are some wounds too deep? Because what you're about to witness will challenge everything you think about redemption." The cafe was quiet on a Tuesday afternoon, populated mostly by students on laptops and retirees reading newspapers. Tyler and Natalie found a corner table, ordered coffee, decaf for her, and sat across from each other with 6 months of silence between them. "You look good," Tyler said finally. "Healthy. Happy even. I'm managing. That's more than I expected, honestly. After everything." Natalie cradled her coffee cup, using it as something to focus on besides Tyler's face. "What did you want to talk about?" "I've been in therapy," Tyler said bluntly. 3 times a week since January. Working through everything. The cheating, the betrayal, the wedding night, my relationship with my father. All of it. "Good for you. Don't be sarcastic. I'm trying to tell you something." Tyler leaned forward. "My therapist asked me a question 2 months ago that I couldn't answer. She asked me what I wanted. Not what I deserved or what I'd lost, but what I actually wanted moving forward. And I realized I wanted to stop being angry. I wanted to stop carrying around this rage and hurt and desire for revenge against you." He held up a hand as Natalie started to speak. "I know, Rich, right? Me wanting revenge after what you did. But that's what I felt. And my therapist said that holding on to that anger was only hurting me. Not you. Me." Natalie set down her coffee cup. "Where is this going, Tyler?" "I forgive you." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and unexpected. "You what?" "I forgive you," Tyler repeated. "Not because what you did was okay. Not because I've forgotten or because it doesn't matter. But because carrying that weight was destroying me. And I choose not to be destroyed anymore." Natalie felt something shift in her chest, a pressure she hadn't known she was holding. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. This isn't about you absolving yourself or me being noble. This is about me reclaiming my life from the wreckage we both created. We both." Natalie's voice sharpened. "I didn't cheat on you with multiple women for over a year. No, you did something arguably worse. But I started it, Natalie. My betrayal set this whole thing in motion. If I'd been faithful, if I'd been the man I promised to be when I proposed to you, none of this would have happened. Tyler's eyes were clear, honest. So yes, we both. The truth of it settled over Natalie like weight. He was right. The chain of destruction had started with his betrayal, but she'd chosen to respond with nuclear force. I made a lot of mistakes, Natalie said quietly. Destroyed a lot of lives in service of revenge. And I don't know how to live with that. You start by acknowledging it. Then you make different choices. Tyler paused. And maybe you let people help you. Like your daughter. He hesitated. Like me, if you'll allow it. Why would you want to help me? Because that's my sister you're carrying. Half-sister, technically, but still. The only sibling I'll ever have. Tyler's voice softened. And because I've had 6 months to think about what happened, and I realized that you becoming a mother while carrying all this guilt and rage and self-hatred, that's not good for anyone. Not for you. Not for the baby. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, hormones and exhaustion, and the unexpected kindness of the man she tried to destroy. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Probably not. But I'm giving it anyway. Not for you, for me. Because I'm tired of being the victim in this story. I'd rather be the person who chose healing over hurt. They sat in silence, both processing the enormity of what had just been offered and accepted. I don't know how to do this, Natalie finally said. Move forward. Be better. Raise a child who was conceived in such darkness. Neither do I, Tyler admitted. But I think we start by telling her the truth when she's old enough. Not the sanitized version, the real truth. That she was born from complicated circumstances involving flawed people who made terrible choices. And that despite all of that, she's loved. Is she? Natalie whispered. I created her as a weapon. Tyler. How do I tell her that and expect her to believe she's loved? Because people can change. You're not the same person who conceived that revenge plan 9 months ago. You've spent 6 months pregnant, watching your body change, feeling her move inside you. Has any of that changed how you feel about her? Natalie thought about the flutter of kicks she felt every day now. The way her hand automatically moved to her stomach when she was stressed. The ultrasound photos she kept in her wallet. The nursery she'd been slowly decorating, choosing soft yellows and greens instead of the cold whites she'd originally planned. I love her, she admitted, and saying it out loud felt like a revelation. I don't know when it happened, but I do. I love her. Then that's what matters. Not how she was conceived, but how she's received. Tyler smiled, sad but genuine. Kids are resilient. If you love her, if you're honest with her, if you show her how to be better than her origins, she'll be okay. And if I fail, then you fail. But you try again. That's what my therapist keeps telling me. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep trying to be better. Natalie wiped at her eyes, hormones making her more emotional than usual. When did you become wise? 6 months of intensive therapy and a lot of painful self-reflection. Tyler's smile turned wry. Also, hitting rock bottom helps with perspective. Can't get much lower than having your wife reveal she's been sleeping with your father on your wedding night. The laugh that escaped Natalie was unexpected, dark humor in a dark situation. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. For using your father. For the wedding night. For all of it. You didn't deserve that level of destruction. No, I didn't. But I did deserve consequences. And while your consequences were extreme, they taught me things about myself I needed to learn. Like the fact that I'm capable of profound selfishness. That I hurt people I claim to love. That I need to do better. Me too. They finished their coffee, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. Tyler's new job in Portland, Natalie's prenatal yoga class, the surprisingly difficult task of choosing a pediatrician. As they prepared to leave, Tyler pulled out his phone. Can I give you my number? Real one this time, not the one from 6 months ago. Just in case you need anything. Baby stuff, emotional support, someone to vent to about how terrifying impending motherhood is. Natalie added his contact information, the simple act feeling significant. A bridge being built over scorched earth. Tyler, she said as they walked to their cars. Why are you really doing this? Being kind to me after everything. He considered the question, keys in hand, June sunshine, making him squint. Because the alternative is spending the rest of my life angry and bitter and alone. And I'm choosing not to be that person. He paused. Also because my therapist pointed out something interesting. You know what the opposite of love is? Hate. Indifference. Love and hate both require investment, emotion, connection. The opposite of love is not caring at all. Tyler met her eyes. And I realized I still care about you, Natalie. Not romantically. That's dead and buried. But as a person, as the mother of my sister, as someone I shared something significant with, even if it ended in disaster. So I'm choosing connection over isolation. Forgiveness over resentment. That's Natalie searched for words. That's remarkably mature. Yeah, well, destruction and therapy will do that to you. Tyler opened his car door, then turned back. One more thing. Have you heard from my father? Natalie shook her head. Not since he left. The trust fund gets deposited monthly, but there's been no personal contact. He's in Italy, Tuscany. He sent me an email last week. First communication since he left. Said he's seeing someone. A widow who owns a vineyard. Says he's trying to build something new. Good for him. Is it? Tyler's expression was unreadable. I don't know if running to another continent counts as healing or just avoiding the problem. But he seems lighter, less burdened. Do you talk to him? We're working on it. Slowly. Very slowly. The betrayal runs deep on both sides. But we've started emailing. Baby steps towards something that isn't total estrangement. Natalie absorbed this. Richard was healing too. They were all scattered across continents and emotional landscapes, trying to rebuild from the ruins. Tell him. She paused. Tell him the baby's healthy. That it's a girl. He probably doesn't care, but in case he does. I will. Tyler climbed into his car. Take care of yourself, Natalie. And call me if you need anything. I mean it. He drove away, leaving Natalie standing in the parking lot, one hand on her belly, feeling something she hadn't felt in 6 months. Hope Point 3 months later, on a September evening when Seattle's late summer warmth was giving way to autumn chill, Natalie's water broke. She was in her condo, finishing the nursery, hanging the last mobile, a delicate arrangement of stars and moons that she'd spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing. The sudden gush of fluid soaked through her yoga pants and onto the carefully chosen rug. Oh, she said to the empty room. Oh, this is happening. She called her mother first, who'd flown up from California 2 weeks ago to be present for the birth. Then her doctor. Then, after a moment's hesitation, Tyler. He answered on the second ring. Natalie, everything okay? I'm in labor. Water just broke. I'm heading to the hospital. I'm coming. Tyler, you don't have to. I'm coming. I'm in Seattle for work anyway. Which hospital? She told him. Hung up. Felt another contraction start to build. Her mother arrived within 20 minutes, took charge of the hospital bag, helped Natalie to the car. The drive to Swedish Medical Center was a blur of increasingly painful contractions and her mother's steady reassurance. You're going to be fine, sweetheart. You're strong. You can do this. Labor was 14 hours of intensity Natalie hadn't anticipated despite all the prenatal classes and books. Pain that rewrote her understanding of what her body could endure. Exhaustion that made her wonder if she'd survive this, if the baby would survive this, if any of them would emerge intact. Her mother stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, murmuring encouragement. And Tyler came. He arrived around 2 a.m., looking worried and uncertain. The nurse had asked if he was the father. He'd explained he was the baby's uncle, which had earned a confused look but ultimate acceptance. Can I? He gestured toward the room. Natalie, between contractions, had nodded. Why not? He'd offered support, and she desperately needed it. Tyler had sat in the corner, letting her mother take the primary support role, but offering quiet encouragement during the worst contractions. Bringing ice chips, making terrible jokes that somehow helped, being present in a way that was unexpected and deeply appreciated. At 6:47 a.m., as September sun began filtering through the hospital windows, Natalie gave birth to a 6-pound, 9-ounce baby girl. The first sound the baby made was a lusty cry that filled the room with life. The nurse placed her on Natalie's chest, tiny, perfect, covered in vernix and blood, and absolutely beautiful. "Oh," Natalie breathed, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, hello." The baby squinted up at her, dark eyes unfocused but searching, trying to understand this new world, this new person, this new reality. "She's perfect," Natalie's mother whispered, crying too. Tyler stood back, giving them space, but Natalie caught his expression, awe and joy and something like love. "Do you want to meet your niece?" Natalie asked. Tyler approached cautiously, looking at the small bundle in Natalie's arms. "She's so tiny." "She's perfect," Natalie corrected. She looked down at her daughter, and felt something settle in her chest. "Catherine. Her name is Catherine." She hadn't planned to name the baby after Richard's late wife. Hadn't consciously decided it. But the name felt right, honoring the woman whose death had set so much in motion, acknowledging the complexity of the circumstances, giving the baby a connection to her heritage. "Catherine," Tyler repeated softly. He reached out, let the baby's tiny fist wrap around his finger. "Hey there, Catherine. I'm your Uncle Tyler, and I promise I'm going to be the best uncle you could ask for." The baby yawned, an enormous yawn for such a small face, and both adults laughed. "She's already unimpressed with us," Natalie said. "Smart kid." They stayed like that for a long moment. Natalie holding her daughter, Tyler connected by one small hand, Natalie's mother watching with tears in her eyes. A family formed not from conventional circumstances, but from choice, forgiveness, and the determination to be better than their worst moments. Snow fell on Seattle the week before Christmas. The same rare snow that had fallen on Natalie's wedding day a year ago. Natalie sat in her living room, Catherine asleep in her arms, watching the flakes drift past the window. The condo was decorated for the holidays. A small tree in the corner, stockings hung on the mantel, the general chaos of new motherhood scattered across every surface. Her phone buzzed. An email from an unfamiliar address. She shifted Catherine carefully, opened it with one hand. "Dear Natalie, Tyler told me about Catherine's birth. Congratulations." He also told me her name, which I admit surprised me more than anything else in this entire saga. "I'm not ready to meet her. I don't know if I ever will be. The circumstances of her conception and birth are too tangled with pain for me to approach fatherhood with any kind of honesty or presence. Perhaps that makes me a coward. Perhaps it makes me realistic. But I wanted you to know that I'm glad she's healthy. I'm glad you're healthy. And I'm glad Tyler has chosen to be involved in her life. He's a better man than I gave him credit for. I've enclosed an additional contribution to Catherine's trust fund. Not because I feel obligated. The original trust covers everything she could need, but because I wanted to consider it an inheritance from a father who can't be present, but wishes he could be. I'm building a life here in Italy. It's simple, quiet, and blessedly free of the complications that define my Seattle existence. I'm in love with someone who knows nothing about the Morrison family drama, and hopefully never will. We're planning to marry next spring. I don't expect your congratulations or approval. I just wanted you to know that I'm finding peace in the ruins you and I created together. Take care of Catherine. Take care of yourself. And perhaps, someday, tell her that her biological father was flawed and complicated and incapable of rising to the occasion, but that he hoped she would be better than all of us. Richard." Natalie read the email 3 times, Catherine warm and sleeping against her chest. Richard was moving on, building a new life, finding peace. Good. She deleted the email, no point in preserving it, and looked down at her daughter. "Your father is in Italy," she whispered. "Your Uncle Tyler is coming over tomorrow to help me assemble your new play mat because I'm terrible at following instructions. Your grandmother is making enough cookies to feed an army. And your mother is figuring out how to be a person who's made terrible mistakes, but is trying desperately to do better." Catherine stirred, made a small sound, settled back into sleep. The doorbell rang. Natalie carefully stood, still adjusting to the logistics of moving while holding a baby, and answered it. Tyler stood there, covered in snow, holding a wrapped present in a bag from their favorite Thai place. "Dinner," he announced, "and an early Christmas present for Catherine. Can I come in?" "Of course." He stamped snow off his boots, came inside, immediately moved to the baby. How's my favorite niece? Your only niece. Still my favorite. Tyler set down his packages, reached out. Can I hold her? Natalie transferred Catherine carefully, watched Tyler cradle her with the confidence of someone who'd been practicing for 3 months. He'd been true to his word, visiting weekly, helping with late-night feedings when Natalie was desperate, assembling furniture, offering support without judgment. He'd become family in the most unexpected way. So, Tyler said, swaying gently with Catherine, I got an interesting email from my father today. Yeah, he's getting married, to the Italian woman. Invited me to the wedding. Are you going? Tyler considered. I think so. I'm not ready to forgive him completely, but I'm ready to witness him starting over. That's something. That's everything, Natalie corrected. They ate dinner together, Thai food from containers, Catherine sleeping in her bassinet, snow falling outside. A year ago, they'd been getting married, a wedding that had lasted 4 hours before imploding. Now they were here, not married, not romantic, but connected by something more durable than romance. Family. Chosen and complicated and real. I have something for you, Tyler said after they'd finished eating. He pulled out an envelope. Early Christmas present. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A legal document. Natalie read it, confusion giving way to understanding. You want to adopt her? Legally. Not replace Richard as her father. He's that biologically and financially. But yes, I want to be her legal guardian along with you. So if something happens to you, she has someone. So she knows she has family beyond just one parent. Tyler looked nervous. You don't have to say yes. It's probably presumptuous, and yes, overstepping boundaries and wait, yes. Yes. Natalie felt tears building again, hormones and gratitude, and the sheer unexpected grace of this offer. Yes, I want to be your legal guardian. Her uncle, her family. Tyler's smile was brilliant. Yeah. He picked up Catherine, who'd woken up and was making small fussing sounds. You hear that, kiddo? I'm officially your uncle, which means I get to teach you all the things your mom won't approve of, like terrible music and worse jokes, and how to properly fold a burrito. Essential life skills, Natalie said drily. The most essential. They spent the evening together, the 3 of them, building a family from the wreckage of revenge and betrayal. It wasn't the family any of them had imagined a year ago, but it was real and flawed, and held together by choice rather than obligation. Catherine's first birthday party was held in Natalie's condo on a September afternoon exactly 1 year after her dramatic entry into the world. The place was filled with people. Natalie's mother, Tyler and his girlfriend, a Portland architect he'd been dating for 6 months, Jessica, the maid of honor who'd watched Natalie's wedding implode and had somehow remained a loyal friend, a few colleagues from Natalie's work, and several other mothers for Natalie's new parent group. Catherine sat in her high chair, face covered in chocolate cake, delighted by the chaos around her. She'd started walking last month, early for a 1-year-old, and had immediately used her new mobility to get into everything. She had Richard's gray eyes and Natalie's dark curls, and a personality that suggested she'd inherited stubbornness from both sides of her genetic heritage. Tyler was on the floor, helping her open presents, making exaggerated surprised faces that sent Catherine into peals of laughter. Uncle Tyler is absolutely wrapped around her finger, Tyler's girlfriend, Mara, observed, sitting next to Natalie. Completely, Natalie agreed. It's actually adorable. He talks about her constantly. Shows everyone at work photos. You'd think she was his own kid. In a lot of ways, she is. Mara nodded, understanding in her expression. Tyler had told her everything, the whole sordid story, and Mara had chosen to stay, to be part of this unconventional family. That said something about her character. As the party wound down, after guests had departed and wrapping paper had been cleaned up, Natalie found herself alone in the kitchen with Tyler, while Catherine napped. Thank you, she said, for all of this. For being here. For being her family. Thank you for letting me, Tyler countered. A year ago, I never would have imagined this. Being back in Seattle regularly. Being part of your life. Being an uncle. A year ago, I was destroying your life on your wedding night. We've come a long way. Yeah. Tyler smiled. We have. Do you ever regret it? Forgiving me? Being involved with Catherine? Never. Do you regret any of it? The revenge, the destruction, the whole mess. Natalie considered the question seriously. I regret the pain I caused. I regret using Richard. I regret the wedding night confrontation. That was cruel and unnecessary. She paused, looking toward the nursery where Catherine slept. But I can't regret the path that led to her. She's the best thing I've ever done, even if the circumstances were the worst. That's the thing about destruction, Tyler said thoughtfully. Sometimes beauty grows in the ruins. Not because the destruction was good, but because people choose to plant seeds anyway. When did you become a philosopher? Therapy. Lots and lots of therapy. They laughed together, genuine, warm, free of the bitterness that had characterized their relationship a year ago. Natalie's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown international number. Tyler sent photos of Catherine's birthday. She's beautiful. You're doing well. I'm glad. Natalie showed Tyler the message. He read it, then looked at her. Are you okay with that? Him reaching out? I think so. He's not trying to be involved. Just acknowledging that she exists. That he knows about her. It's more than nothing. More than nothing, Tyler agreed. That's kind of theme, isn't it? All of us doing slightly better than nothing. And somehow that's adding up to something good. Something good, Natalie echoed. Catherine woke up from her nap then, crying for attention. Natalie went to get her, brought her back to the living room. Catherine immediately reached for Tyler, who took her with practiced ease. Hey, birthday girl, have a good nap. Catherine babbled, something incomprehensible, but enthusiastic. She says yes. Tyler translated solemnly. She says she wants more cake. Natalie corrected. That too. They sat together, the 3 of them, in the golden afternoon light filtering through the windows. Not a traditional family, not an uncomplicated one, but a family nonetheless. Natalie had set out a year ago to destroy Tyler Morrison's life. She'd succeeded beyond her wildest plans. But in the process, she'd also destroyed herself. And then, slowly, painfully, with help from the most unlikely source, she'd rebuilt something new, something better. Not because revenge had been worth it, but because growth had been necessary. And Catherine, beautiful, innocent Catherine, represented everything they'd become. Not the sins of the past, but the possibility of the future. A future where people who'd hurt each other could choose healing. Where destruction didn't have to be permanent. Where love could emerge from the ruins if people were willing to do the hard work of being better. What are you thinking about? Tyler asked, noticing Natalie's distant expression. I'm thinking, Natalie said slowly, that I don't know if I'm a good person. I've done terrible things. Caused immense pain. weaponized intimacy and pregnancy and love. And I'm trying to be better. For her. For myself. Maybe that's enough. It's more than enough, Tyler said. We're all just trying to be better than we were. That's the whole point. Catherine chose that moment to grab both their noses simultaneously, giggling at her achievement. She's gonna be trouble, Natalie observed. Definitely, Tyler agreed. But the good kind of trouble. The kind that makes life interesting. Like her parents, Natalie said, then caught herself. Parent and uncle. Sorry. It's okay. In a lot of ways, I am her parent. We're co-parenting. Even if the legal language is different. We are, Natalie agreed. And we're doing okay at it. Better than okay. Outside, Seattle moved through its late afternoon rhythms. Somewhere in Tuscany, Richard Morrison was probably having dinner with his new wife, building a life free from the complications of his past. Somewhere in the collective unconscious of three damaged adults, healing was happening slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. And in a condo in downtown Seattle, a baby girl who'd been conceived as a weapon, but born into love played with her mother and uncle, unaware of the darkness that had preceded her existence. Aware only of the light that, if you're still watching, if you made it to the end of this story, you're probably wondering, was Natalie the villain or the victim? Was her revenge justified? Or did she cross a line that can never be uncrossed? The truth is, she was both, and neither. She was a woman who'd been betrayed and chose destruction over healing, who weaponized pregnancy and love and family bonds, who caused immense pain in service of revenge. But she was also a woman who learned from her mistakes, who chose to be better for her daughter, who accepted forgiveness from the man she tried to destroy, and built something beautiful from the ruins. The moral of this story isn't that revenge is sweet or that it's poison. It's that human beings are complicated. We're capable of extraordinary cruelty and extraordinary grace, sometimes in the same breath. Tyler cheated for over a year. Natalie orchestrated his complete destruction. Richard betrayed his son. And yet somehow, all three of them found their way to something resembling peace. Not because the pain didn't matter, but because they chose growth over grievance. So what's the lesson here? Maybe it's that betrayal has consequences, but those consequences don't have to be nuclear. Maybe it's that revenge feels satisfying in the moment, but leaves you hollow afterward. Maybe it's that forgiveness is harder and braver than vengeance. Or maybe it's simply this. We're all capable of being monsters and heroes, often in the same day. The question isn't whether we'll make mistakes or cause pain. We will. The question is what we do afterward. Do we double down on destruction? Or do we choose the harder path of becoming better? Natalie chose destruction first. Then, slowly, painfully, she chose better. Tyler chose betrayal first. Then forgiveness. Richard chose escape first. Then acknowledgement from a distance. And Catherine, innocent, beautiful Catherine, grew up loved by people who learned the hard way that love is a choice, not a feeling. A choice you make every day, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. That's the real ending. Not revenge, or justice, or punishment. Just flawed people choosing to be better for the sake of a child who deserve their best selves. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think or feel or question your own capacity for forgiveness, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear that healing is possible after betrayal. Subscribe for more stories that explore the complicated truth of human relationships. And drop a comment. I want to hear your thoughts. Where do you draw the line between justice and revenge? Have you ever had to forgive the unforgivable? Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this story of destruction and redemption. Until next time, remember, we're all just doing our best with the broken pieces we've been given. This is True Crime Files HQ, reminding you that the most important relationship you have is the one with the person you're becoming.